Hello, folks. Thank you for tuning in to this episode, a current event episode of the Federalist Files. On today's show, illegal aliens pouring into our country, the U.S. citizens increasing approval of the Second Amendment, white liberals more likely to have mental disorders, and some rising tensions in the Middle East.
The reason I'm bothering to do this is I keep hearing on the press Biden's going to raise your taxes. Anybody making less than $400,000 a year will not pay a single penny in taxes. And we will not increase the deficit either, unlike the last gigantic tax cut, which increased the deficit by $2 trillion.
One good thing the good thing about having Joe Biden as the president of the United States is he makes a great intro video every single episode. He averages a couple of gaffes a week, so usually I can compose myself and put a couple together in order to introduce the show. Hello, folks. I greatly appreciate you all tuning in. As always, everything will be in the description below, all of the show notes. Please like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff as always. Not really heavy news thus far since we're kind of just coming off the weekend. We had a lot to cover there. I have some carryover of older news, that white liberal piece I wanted to talk about, which is actually going to be the title of this one. It's going to be White Liberals Are More Likely to Have Mental Disorders. I try to go for the most inflammatory comments and material because at this point I just don't care. To start the show, we have this, and once again to hit on all of these illegal immigrants crossing the border at exponentially high rates, really. And Buck Sexton talked to this a little bit. He went down to the border, and he talked to a lot of border agents, one specializing in gang units. And he's saying there is a massive child trafficking scheme, sex trafficking scheme that is transpiring on the southern border. And really the media, as well as the administration, does not want anyone to talk about it at all. And they claim, and I have this piece from Bongino.com, they claim that they are coming because of Joe Biden. And inside this piece, there's about a 10-minute long segment. You have a Daily Caller investigative reporter goes down there. He's asking some questions of the illegal aliens. And they're pretty much saying, yeah, Joe Biden, that's the reason we're coming. We know Donald Trump, he was very tight on immigration, building the wall, all that good stuff. It really was one of the biggest differences of this current administration and the last administration is the stay in Mexico policy when it came to getting your court case, your court case, whether the United States was going to allow you in because of what is it that they're claiming asylum, the asylum cases. It was the stay in Mexico policy, whereas now they're just allowing them right into the United States. They're telling them to go get their court date, to go to a specific office, the nearest immigration office, and get a court date themselves, which they're just not going to do. And that, I think, is actually the biggest difference, because that was a natural deterrent, because you knew you were going to have to go to Mexico, you would have to stay in Mexico, and then you would have your asylum case. And then when you have your asylum case, you get turned down. There was no chance of you really being able to enter the United States if you got turned down. Whereas in this system that we currently have, they just don't show up to their court date, or they don't even register to get a court date, which would make sense if you want to illegally immigrate here. So it starts off the piece. It says, one of the first things Joe Biden did after taking office was to begin undoing Donald Trump's legacy on immigration through a series of executive orders. Those executive orders aim to, among other things, establish a pathway to citizenship for 11 million illegals, halt border wall construction, rebranding kids in cages as kids in overflow facilities, and halt deportations. That sent a clear and immediate message to prospective illegal aliens. And border apprehensions in January promptly jumped 157% year over year, only to continue surging since. I think the number since, I want to say, folks, it's something like 300%, 375, I think the percentage was. So it's almost it's really like a 4-time increase almost. Crazy numbers, really. So it goes on here. in January, and this is straight from, I believe this is from the New York Times or the New York Post. It states in January, Biden reversed Trump's Remain in Mexico policy that acquired asylum seekers to remain in Mexico for American court hearings. Critics argue this has played a major factor in the influx of migrants entering the southern border, as well as Mexico's new law that prevents the country from accepting migrants traveling with young children. A female migrant told the Daily Caller as she approached Border Patrol, talking about Trump, she stated, and I quote, "He was very racist and had no love for the people who are of humble means." So he goes on to actually talk about Joe Biden, another illegal alien, said, and I quote, "Thank you for supporting us. We appreciate it." End quote, talking about Joe Biden. So we're just having a soft strategy on immigration. From what I understand, they have been halting the border wall construction in the military. And we have this stay at home or stay in Mexico policy that has been eradicated. And the real problem with this is they just give whoever these illegal aliens, because they legit don't even have the room to handle them all. They don't have the personnel, they don't have the staff to handle all of these people that are illegally crossing the border. They were just giving them paperwork. They're saying, go file your own court date at whatever location you decide to go. The only thing that they have to do is actually give them the location that they're going to. So it's a total travesty, really. It's a disaster. It's egregious what's going on at the border right now. It is a complete catastrophe. It's not being covered by the mainstream corporate media or the Democrat Party. No one's even talking about it. I did have a clip of Mazie Hirono talking about it, but I just didn't feel like even listening to her. She's such an idiot. But she was ripping into Biden as well, and Kamala saying that they should be down there doing something about it. So Biden proposed, and this is the remedy to the problem. He proposed to send $4 billion to Central America to curb illegal immigration. This is a Fox News piece written by Adam Shaw. Representatives James Comer and Jason Smith, these are representatives of the House Oversight and Budget Committees. They're Republicans. They're the ranking members. They wrote an acting Office of Management and Budget Director, Shalonda Young, expressing concern about a plan for a conditional cash transfer program to address the root cause in Central America leading to the border crisis. So word on the street now is that Biden is just going to, and I've reported this before, but I guess he's actually going to try to go through with this. He's just going to he's going to pay off Central American governments $4 billion, and realistically, that's not what's going to happen. The government's not going to get the money. It's going to go to non-government organizations, the cartels. It's going to go to corrupt politicians that are going to hand the money down to the cartels, really. So we're paying off the cartels to say, hey, you guys we're literally paying them money. Because to say, well, you guys don't need the money anymore. We're going to give you so much money that you no longer have to work to earn more money. And you guys can stop illegally immigrating people over the border. This is a payoff. We are paying off the cartels so they no longer are pushing people into the United States because it's a business for them. They're making a lot of money. If you pay them off $4 billion, especially in American dollars, that's enough probably for them to at least curtail it for a certain period of time. So it goes on, and this is actually straight from the letter that James Comer and Jason Smith, the ranking members of the House Oversight and Budget Committees, this is what they wrote to Shalonda Young. This is just part of the letter. It's about 2 pages long. So it states, and I quote, "In fact, the root causes of the current border crisis are the Biden administration's reckless rhetoric and policies, which quickly and haphazardly rolled back successful deterrent policies implemented by President Trump. The strategy of sending cash payments to foreign countries to stem the tide of illegal immigration caused by Biden administration policies is naive and misguided. Moreover, the countries identified as potential recipients include some of the most corrupt countries in the world, with El Salvador and Guatemala ranking in the top 10. This raises further concerns that such aid would simply be wasted on corrupt politicians and organizations serving their own interests and not those of the interests of the American people." And this is all true, of course. This is going to be a disaster. I think what'll happen, I think what's been happening in kind of behind closed doors, behind the Iron Curtain, rather, you have just the Biden administration bending over for everybody. At the very end of this show, I'm going to go through a segment on how there's uprising tension in the Middle East, and it seems like we're just bending over backwards for the Taliban as well as the Iranian leaders too. So, additionally, this letter requested all documents and communications related to payments to discourage migration, as well as documents related to concerns about corruption or misuse of funds by Northern Triangle governments. Northern Triangle meaning kind of like that Central American government. The letter comes days after Biden claimed that we've gotten control of the crisis at the border and again blamed the Trump administration for the crisis. Meanwhile, the Pentagon announced that it was canceling all border wall construction projects paid for with military money. So, I just don't, and I do remember Biden blaming the past administration. I just don't know how you blame the past administration for this. This was created by you, your rhetoric. When you went up there to debate, when you talked about allowing people into the country and they're paying for their health care, what did you expect? Did you expect people not to come here? And do you expect you're going to stop building the wall, you're going to be loose on immigration, and you expect people not to come here? And there's a position that was actually held by Democrats for a very long time. It was held by Clinton, it was held by Carter, it was also held by Barack Obama. To have a tight border and not allow illegal aliens to come into this country. There's so many recordings that you can find of all of them talking about it. It was actually a bipartisan agreement where you had both parties agreed on this, and the Trump derangement syndrome actually drove the Democrat Party away from agreeing with having tight borders, because you need to have tight borders if you want to have, these union-paid jobs, if you want to keep the wage reasonable for the American people. There's a supply and demand, and when you throw in a bunch of unskilled laborers into the economy, especially unskilled laborers that also aren't actually documented, they're not citizens, so they're not paying the same taxation, so they can get a cheaper price on them, it screws the entire economy out of whack. So next, I have this, and this is because there's been this failure by our government to enforce the laws, the federal government itself, and then also individual state governments, and they're all run by Democrats. So we have Democrats just not enforcing the laws. The executive branch is in charge of enforcing the laws. Then we have governors. We have these blue states with these Democrat governors that are also, additionally, their job as the executive is to enforce the law. They're not doing so either. So there's a lack of law and order. And there's a lack of, I don't really exactly know if it's just a societal, a cultural thing, just a hating of law enforcement, a hating of authority, hating of police. And I think part of the reason is, these kids when they grew up, and I was kind of part of this generation, these MVP, you would get the participation trophies on them that they weren't even, they also would say MVP on them sometimes. These participation trophies, which is even worse because you can go out there and play terribly and lose, and then you're told that you're the MVP. But I think it's part of this generation, full of what I like to call them is lifetime losers, where they make excuses for themselves, they blame everyone else for their own problems, rather than actually take accountability themselves. So, the NYPD, 75% increase in quitting or retirement in 2020. This is a Daily Wire piece written by Hank Barron. It starts off, the members of the NYPD grew so disenchanted with their jobs in 2020 that over 5,300 uniformed officers either retired or quit, an astonishing 75% over the year before, amounting to 15% of the total number of officers on the force. The impetus for the officers quitting seemed to be the death of George Floyd and the unrest that followed. Between May 25th and June 24th, 2020, a whopping 272 officers left the force in 1 month. 2,600 officers quit, and 2,746 filed for retirement, according to the New York Post. The 5,346 officers who left the force were nearly 2,300 more than left the force in 2019, when 1,509 officers quit and 1,544 filed for retirement. So what we're looking at, it says a 75% increase, whether it's retiring or quitting, resigning, straight up resigning, or maybe quitting to go somewhere else. What we're seeing right now is we're seeing a massive overhaul of a lot of these these police officers that work in these cities, and they're going to suburban areas because they know it's safer in those areas. You're not really going to get that crazy defund the police thing going on, keeping your wages low, and then you're also not going to have people going for your throat, going for your neck, harassing you the way that they are in these big cities, where it is become a lawlessness. And there's no enforcement of the law because a lot of these Democrat politicians are not allowing for it to happen. If it does happen and you decide to enforce the law, you are at risk for losing your job and maybe even being thrown in prison. So in New York City, as the example, 5,300 of them either retired or quit, comparatively last year to around 3,000. So we're seeing an increase of 2,300 officers that are retiring, and that was 15% of the police force, the officers on the job. So you had the PBA Association president, Pat Lynch, talk about this. He stated, "The mayor and city council are absolutely trying to abolish the police. They've kept our pay absurdly low. They've ratcheted up our exposure to lawsuits. They've demonized us at every opportunity, and they've taken away the tool we need to do the job we all signed up for, which is to keep our community safe. Now the NYPD is spending money on slick recruiting ads to replace the experienced cops who are leaving in droves. City Hall should just admit the truth. Police abolition through attrition is their goal. They won't stop until the jobs become completely unbearable, and they're getting closer to that goal with every passing day." So this current movement, the problem with it is saying we're going to defund the police, we're going to pay them less. You pay them less, you're going to get less qualified people to do the job. And then additionally, you're going to have people leaving the force too. So you guys are exacerbating the problem. If you had a problem with the way in which the police were doing their job, if you thought they were overbearing, by defunding them, they're going to be more overbearing because they're going to be less well-trained, less qualified. They're going to have to go to their gun much more often if they're unable to control someone else's body because the qualification is so low in terms of the fitness standards and the skills that need to be attained to get the job. And it's really what the problem is. And it's going to get to this point in these big cities where hopefully, and I never hope for any of this, and I've said this many times, you're going to have a bleed over from the big cities, and now you're going to start getting it in your own suburban areas. You're going to have these small little insurrections, or rather, I don't even really want to call them insurrections, little bits of pandemonium here and there. We're going to see some serious problems where there's going to be some mob rule in some of these suburban areas. Maybe let's say some sort of school, a teacher does something racist or something of that nature. We're going to have people showing up at the school looking to burn the school down in the suburban area. It's going to be, it can really, this is a very slippery slope that we've been going down these last couple of months. I really didn't think that they would go for the implementation of total tyranny so quickly and so blatantly as well. I really thought maybe they would try to do it, try to be a little inconspicuous about it, but it seems like they're not going through with it or surreptitious about it, but they're not, they don't care. It's just blatant, it's obvious, it's right out there in your face. So because of this, because of not only, and I noticed this myself when I would go to get ammo, I noticed when COVID started, people were kind of stocking up on ammo a little bit, and then it was exacerbated as soon as some of this George Floyd stuff happened, a lot of these riots, a lot of these protests. You saw people going, and I had friends starting to hit me up. I had, three different friends of mine calling me up and being like, "Hey man, I gotta get a firearm. What do I do? How do I fill out the registration form? How do I do this? How do I do that? Can you be in New Jersey? You have to write down a couple of references to kind of vouch for you. Can you be my reference? Things of that nature." I have people calling me, asking me all these questions. I'm taking people to go get their firearms. I mean, you have regular working class people that don't want any issues, and they see what's transpiring on TV, and they say, if that's my house, that's a problem because I have all this money. This is my chief investment. You have to think, when you're middle class, I'm not talking about these big rich dudes that have all this money to throw into the stock market, right? When you're middle class, your biggest investment is your real estate, your house, your home, your land. If that gets burned down, you have nothing left. Yeah, the insurance might pay you some money, but they're not going to pay you the true value of that house. Insurance never pays the true value of anything, even your car. If you total your car, they'll pay you something, a stipend, where you'll say, oh, well, at least I have something to kind of rebuild. So if you've been building this house for years, let's say you've done so many renovations, you have a lot of memories in this home, you have the thing burned to the ground by Antifa and BLM, you lose. So at the end of the day, these people want to protect their property, the things that they worked their entire lives for. their kids grew up in. They want to protect their family as well, and they feel like they have a responsibility to do so, which is very reasonable, might I add. So we have many more people arming themselves. And like I said, I noticed in the very beginning of COVID, it was getting kind of difficult to find ammo, but as soon as this George Floyd shit hit, it was like a powder keg, and it exploded the firearms market. You couldn't find guns anywhere. You couldn't find ammo anywhere. They were rationing ammo out. You can get like a box of ammo, but guess what? You're paying double of what you would pay. You're paying $1 a round in New Jersey, which is really I've never seen before. You got 9mm ammo that's usually, if you get a good brand, decent price, you can get it for 15 to 20 cents a round. Now we're seeing it at $1 a round right now. And they only have there's really no variety. It's only specific brands. So people are arming themselves much more. And that is my next article. It's written by Peter Susio. It's a 1945 piece. Now, according to ABC News Washington Post poll, above 500,000 or half of Americans see prioritizing new gun violence laws as a priority, while 43% said they'd prefer to focus on protecting the right to own guns. That has narrowed from a 23-point margin, 57 to 34%, after the April 2018 shooting at a school in Parkland, Florida. It was actually Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 that saw the sharpest decline in support for new weapons laws, and now fewer than half even said that new legislation is needed to reduce the risk of a future mass shooting or to block a red flag. When the poll was last taken, 65% of young Americans said they'd support gun control, and that number's fallen down to 45%, so we don't even have a majority of people that support gun control now. At this point, and years ago, about 2 years ago, you had 65% of young Americans that all supported this. So this is losing popularity. The Second Amendment now has never really been stronger in a very long time. I mean, I don't know historically how powerful the people behind, the impetus behind the Second Amendment has been, but it has not, since I've been born, for sure, it has never had this much support. Because you're now seeing people where about half of Americans, they found that these new gun violence laws were a priority. You had about half of them. And 43% said that they preferred to focus on protecting the right to own guns, right? Before it was 23% and 57%, or I'm sorry, it was now it's a 23-point margin difference from what it was before after the Parkland shooting. You had 57% of Americans that liked the idea of gun laws, and 34% that wanted to protect the Second Amendment. Now you have 43%, so you have almost 10% more people want to protect the Second Amendment, and now those are all people that are probably new gun owners. So we have many more new gun owners in the country, more people that want to protect themselves, and that's kind of what the problem is with this whole defund the police narrative, and that's why Biden wants to eliminate the Second Amendment as soon as he can, because you cannot say, okay, we're going to have no cops, and then you can't take control of the masses. If you had no cops, how are you going to take control of the people if they're all heavily armed? Now, if the people are disarmed and you say, we're going to get rid of the cops, we're going to defund the police are almost more, they protect and serve the community. So actually getting rid of the police kind of works in the government's favor if they want to overtake the people themselves. They'll just bring in the military to enforce their policy. That's what they can do instead. Or they could use the police state if they really wanted to. But the point is, the more armed people for them, it makes it more difficult for Biden to try to take everyone's guns, or for the government to usurp their power. And more people are arming themselves, and it's all from this defund the police narrative. So the Democrats are kind of getting, from what they want, they're getting a lot of the opposites. It was like everybody always said, it might be Joe Biden now is the best gun salesman of all time, but it was always Obama was the best gun salesman of all time. And why is that? Because every single time Obama would come out and say that he was going to take guns away, first thing people would do is they go out and buy more guns and more ammo. It is a counterproductive. It is I forgot the name of the lady. It's the Streisand effect. This lady named Barbara Streisand said, she came out in the news, she said something like, hey, don't go to my house, please don't take pictures of my home, I asked you to do that. Guess what? Everybody goes and they take pictures of her home. So this idea, this defund the police program that they have now everybody goes and buys guns, so it works antithetically to what the Democrat agenda is. So next what I have this article Masks, how they have become a political symbol, how they've been politicized. And I talked about this in my last episode, my last current event, where Biden held his little address to Congress. Everybody's wearing masks while everybody was vaccinated. And they've really found such low percentages of contraction of COVID after vaccination that it was nonsensical and it was impractical for these people to be wearing these masks. And I was very critical of them. I talked about it. And now this post-millennial piece, it writes about how now you have people in the streets, people are wearing masks outside, and the reason they're doing it is strictly because they don't want to be confused or labeled as a Republican. So now it has become almost like this cult-like idea of wearing a mask. It's a political symbol, a political ideology. It says it's almost like slapping a coexist sticker on the back of your Toyota Prius, really, where they say, oh, well, I care about you and I care about other people's livelihoods and their state of being, so I wear this mask. And it goes, okay, well, are you vaccinated? Yes. Okay, well, do you know the rate of contraction once you're already vaccinated? How easily are you a vector to get the virus and then spread it? And usually the answer is always no. Because if you actually knew the percentages, it's such a low, it is like decimal points. It's 0.05 of a percentage point. So it's something like that type of number is, I think, 5 in 10,000 people actually experience that. And then you also have to think at the end of the day, if you pick a randomized set of 10,000 people, are you in the worst shape out of those 10,000 people? Because that's really, the people that are spreading this are people that are really just truly either they're old or they're in some serious, they have some serious pre-existing conditions and they're just in bad health. They have a lot of comorbidities, which is the reasoning for their contraction, their bad health, why they have a compromised immune system. So like I said, this has become a political symbol. And I wanted to go over this last episode. White liberals, more likely to have mental disorders. And my point is, and I've had this conversation with many people, the same conversation. I always say the same thing. Well, do you know the statistics? Do you know the facts? Do you know the data? And no one ever, especially the ones that are debating on the liberal side, they have zero clue. When this started about a year ago, I was talking about the death rates. I said, well, there's this much. And people are saying, oh, the contraction rates, because the case rate's so high. They're explaining the case. I said, yeah, the case rate's so high because we have people going crazy right now. They're running out, getting a test. Every single time, if you go out and you run out and you get a test, and you're positive, then for the next week, if you keep testing yourself positive, that continues to count up as cases when it's really it's one case. You don't have multiple cases. So there was a lot of different inconsistencies with the data. And I explained this many times, and I talked about the death rates as well. And I knew what this was. From the very beginning, I was called many names, apathetic, mean, all the ones I don't care about people, I'm inconsiderate, because I was reading through the data and I was presenting people with the facts and the statistics on this, because I knew it was nowhere near as deadly and it did not warrant what we did with our economy. It did not warrant shutting everything down. And in New Jersey, we actually still have things shut down. And I'm going to have that at the end of the show. I think May 19th, they're talking about opening everything. But white liberals, they're more likely to have these mental disorders. And what I derive this from is an inability to cross-examine information from both perspectives, an inability to be sagacious, to have an ability to analyze, to understand a threat analysis, to analyze the risk in your life every single day. It is they listen to their golden calves, like Dr. Fauci, they listen to the bureaucracy, they listen to what the government has to say, and they take on that opinion instead of being comprehensive and having their own. So this piece is a Washington Times piece. It is written by Kelly Sadler. It starts off, white liberals are more prone to mental health disorders than individuals who identify as conservative or moderate, according to a Pew Research Center survey. 62% of whites who classify themselves as very liberal or liberal have been told by a doctor they have a mental health condition, as compared to 26% of conservatives and 20% of moderates. So you're looking at, an almost a more than 2 times the chances if you are liberal or very liberal as a white person. Young white people who identified as very liberal were almost 1.5 times more likely to report mental health problems than those who consider themselves liberal. So when you're on the very liberal spectrum side, then you really have a high chance of having a mental health problem or disorder. The entire ideology states, Evie noted, and Evie is the doctor in this case, I think, the one writing. The entire ideology forces its followers to wallow in feelings of helplessness and victimhood, as opposed to building resiliency against hardship, which helps combat depression. Evie was also quick to point out liberals may also be more susceptible to white guilt and savior narratives, which brings them down, especially given last summer's continued BLM riots. Misinformation may also be fueling their decline in mental health. Americans who identify as liberal or very liberal believe 1,000 or more unarmed black men were murdered by police in 2019, according to the survey produced by Skeptic.com. In reality, only 12 were. Yet, this perception reinforces their belief in their white privilege and continued self-loathing. So this is why that they have these mental health disorders or conditions, because they don't live in reality. They live in La La Land. They live in a fallacious, fake world that is just not true. It is irrational. They're in an irrational world. And they talk about their white guilt, their savior narratives, and no one even wants to hear that, really. If you talk to black Americans, they don't like this whole when white people walk up to them and apologize to them. It makes them feel weird. They don't like it. They think it's kind of cucky. It's like pathetic, really, honestly, to genuflect upon another human being. I think is weird. Like, other people are kings to you and they're above you and you're below them. It's just a weird idea. Everyone should kind of be treated equally. That's the whole point of this thing. And it's this, like I said, it's this helplessness, this victimhood ideology. And I was a liberal at one time, and that's really what it is. It is embracing victimhood. It is embracing that you are a product of the environment and there is nothing that you can do with your own individual will to change that. So you just blame the system, you blame the environment, you think that if the environment were to change around you, that somehow the government can pull you up. And that's just not the truth. That's not what's happening. Now in the system that we have celebrities such as LeBron James telling people you are a victim, there's nothing that you can do about it, your life will just perpetuate in this. Meanwhile, he climbed up the ladder and he's very successful now, he's a multi-billionaire. So he tells other people they can't do it, meanwhile he's killing it himself. And it's just the hypocrisy of the left, and this is a currency, this is a sense of value, a sense of currency, being helpless and having this everlasting victimhood, pointing at these hardships in your life and saying, I cannot overcome these. Everybody, when I was in school, always wanted to have something wrong with them. It was very weird. Everyone wanted to have like ADHD, ADD. It's like the new thing is to have, it's a social credit score almost, to have something wrong with you so you can brag about it. Being gay, being bisexual, there was a lot of people coming out as that just to kind of get more notoriety around it. And they think that in the intersectional scale now that they are beyond reproach if they come out as a homosexual, and people cannot make fun of them, they cannot say anything mean about them, because then that is automatically homophobic. And that is the point of this BLM, is if you are critical of, and that's the reason they named it Black Lives Matter. They didn't name it any type of other alliance. They were smart about it. They thought that went through. So if you say, well, I disagree with the group. Oh, so you don't think Black Lives Matter, essentially. That will be their argument every time. Okay, so then you're a racist. That's why they purposefully named it that. So to go on, other polls show liberals have bought into the mainstream media's panic porn surrounding COVID-19 more than other ideologies, also causing them more stress and fear. The vast majority of Democrats overestimate the probability of being hospitalized and dying from COVID-19. Compared to other ideologies, a Gallup survey found there's only a 1 to 5% chance of somebody with COVID-19 having to be hospitalized, yet 41% of Democrats believe there's a greater than 50% chance. Only 10% of Democrat correspondents in the survey knew the correct answer. With all this misinformation, it's not surprising why Democrats are afraid to take off their masks even after they've been vaccinated or are outdoors, and why liberal governors have been reluctant to reopen their states. So really, when we have the mainstream media or the the social media websites having their little fact checkers. They'll fact check something that really isn't actually a counterfact. It will be an opinion. They will go to fact check it. So you also get in this perpetual system of where you really don't actually know what to believe. So you believe what everyone says around you. It's a reverberation. Everyone is getting the same information from the same sources. From the AP is one of the fact checkers. Check Your Fact or PolitiFact. There's a bunch of different fact checkers. They're all pretty much funded by left-wingers. I think Soros funds one of the places that does the vetting of the fact checkers. So they believe what is being told to them, and they don't look for their own facts. What they do is when somebody actually presents facts to them, they just call them a conspiracy theorist, because what the narrative is what they think. And because the narrative actually is not truthful, in reality, this makes them have a mental disorder or a mental breakdown, because they don't understand how their perception of what the narrative is isn't actually the real reality of the situation. So to go on, and this is where I get to my segment of, we have some trouble brewing right now in the Middle East. U.S. strikes the Taliban after they attack with rockets in Afghanistan. So we're being told, Biden comes out, and this is why I said I did not like the idea of him coming out and saying, hey, this is when we're going to start moving our troops out of Afghanistan, and by this date we'll be done. I think it's September 11th, 2021. Okay, so American Military News piece written by Ryan Morgan. So it starts off on Saturday. Taliban forces in Afghanistan launched rockets at a U.S. base in Kandahar, Afghanistan, as U.S. forces began their final withdrawal from the country. The Taliban rocket attack prompted a U.S. counterstrike, which destroyed additional rockets aimed at the U.S. base. Responding to the rocket attack, U.S. Forces Afghanistan spokesman Army Colonel Sonny Leggett tweeted. He stated, and I quote, Kandahar airfield received ineffective indirect fire this afternoon. No injury to personnel or damage to equipment. General Miller has been clear about the coalition's intent to protect the force. And then it was followed by a video statement, which I'm not going to play. It's on the site. So we had these Taliban rockets in Afghanistan shoot to our airbase. A couple of them missed. Then when we were able to see the threat, we shot our own rockets as a counterstrike to destroy their additional rockets that were aimed at the U.S. base here. So the Taliban rocket attack came as a deadline to withdraw all U.S. forces from Afghanistan by May 1st. Passed with thousands of U.S. troops still remaining in the country. The May 1st deadline was set out in an agreement between Donald Trump and the Taliban in February of last year, but President Joe Biden pushed back that deadline in April, saying U.S. troops would only begin their final withdrawal on May 1st and complete it by September 11th, 2021. As Biden moved back the U.S. troop withdrawal time, the Taliban warned that those who remained in Afghanistan beyond May 1st would face repercussions. Kandahar airfield was already the target of an April rocket attack, as Biden expressed doubt about meeting the May 1st withdrawal deadline. So once again, I've gone over this. The recent spending bill for the military, the provision that was written in it, and this has been little reported by the corporate media, and I was one of the very few people, I don't really even know of anybody else that covered this. It had a specific section in it that laid out that took away the power from Donald Trump to pull the troops out by May 1st, or the date that he was listing it as. And they said, well, you're going to have to give all this paperwork to Congress in order to make this move. That is what was written in this new military budget. And by the time he got that paperwork in, he would no longer be the president. So they set it up so Trump could not pull anybody out of Afghanistan, even though he announced that he was going to do so. They set it up so he couldn't. They pretty much tied his hands. And now we have a new administration that now says, oh, they're supposed to be out by May 1st. We're supposed to commence this months ago. Oh, no, don't worry about it. We're going to start on May 1st. And now we're getting attacks from the Taliban in Afghanistan. And these attacks, every single time you see an attack, it could mean, oh, well, we're going to have to militarily engage and send more people over there. And we're going to have to hold down the position to try to do the whole nation building once again, like we've always tried to do. And really, my problem isn't it's the that there's just no haste in doing this and getting our guys out. I understand people are attacking us. Yeah, we should attack them back. I say that all day. Every single time you attack U.S. military, you're going to get a response from the United States military. So then next, what we have Iran teasing an attack on the U.S. Capitol building. Washington Free Beacon piece written by Adam Credo. So Iran, they recently released a provocative new video over the weekend that depicts its military forces blowing up the United States Capitol building, a threat that comes as the Biden administration inches closer to providing Tehran with billions of dollars in economic sanctions relief. The video debuted Sunday on Iranian state-controlled television before Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei delivered remarks in which he praised the country's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the paramilitary force that has killed many Americans, and celebrated leader Qasem Soleimani, who was killed in a drone strike by the former Trump administration. So in this video clip, armed Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps forces are seen marching before the U.S. Capitol's famous dome explodes. It also shows Iranian forces marching up Jerusalem. Okay. Man. So, this is what the problem is. So, if you guys are going to do your little... It's weird. You attack our troops, Taliban. And I don't care. Iran, Taliban. At the end of the day, Iran is the hugest sponsor of terrorism. So, yes, they're obviously affiliated and associated with the Taliban. There's no doubt about it. They're the ones funding a lot of their operations, I'm sure. They have something to do with it. We say, okay, we're going to pull our guys out. Then we're getting attacked because we're doing it too late. And then the answer from the Biden administration is, okay, well, we're going to work out a deal with Iran. We're going to literally hand them money as they're working on a deal with this Iran deal, where they're going to just hand money over to Iran. And then there was something else in this. There was something else in this article as well, saying there's going to be a payment for some hostages, for some American hostages as well. That's a whole other issue. And both sides are denying this agreement, but who knows, really. And then from that response, we say, okay, we're going to pay off Iran. And what Iran does, as an answer, they put out a clip of them blowing up our Capitol building. And I'm going to play it. It's very short. It's about 12 seconds long. Play 5. So just the visual for those that are listening, you have an explosion at the U.S. Capitol that they play out. Pretty much the entire building's crumbling. And then you have a march on Jerusalem as well, that they're going to go and, take Israel, really, is the answer. They're going to take the Holy Land back. So this video and Khamenei's remarks, which is the leader, the supreme leader of Iran, his remarks come as the Biden administration engages in diplomacy with Iran aimed at inking a revamped nuclear deal. The administration is reportedly prepared to lift crippling sanctions on Iran's banks, diplomats, and oil trade, signaling that Washington is desperate to entice Iran into accepting a deal that would only partially unwind its growing nuclear program. Republicans in Congress accused the Biden administration of relieving pressure on Iran at a time when it could topple the hardline regime and empower democratic reformers in the country. They also view the latest Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps video as a sign that Iran's regime will never moderate its anti-American and anti-Western rhetoric, which I'm sure they probably won't. I think there's huge cultural differences in America and in the Middle East. In the Middle East, I'm pretty sure it's still legal to throw gay people off of rooftops and murder them or what have you, do whatever you want to them. Really, that's still legalized over there in that country and a lot of the countries in the Middle East. So it's really just a totally different. It's just such a different culture that's why they probably disdain us so strongly. And then the fact that we've occupied over there for about 20 years, which is kind of a problem as well. And really, what the answer from Biden should be, and I'll tell you. You can be non-interventionalist, but you don't have to genuflect and capitulate the way that he's doing. You could just back out, and that's it. And continue the sanctions. Continue the sanctions. You say, listen, we're not going to do anything for you. We're not trading with you. We're not going to help you out in any way. But at the same time, we're additionally going to leave. And they'd still be mad at America. No matter what happens, as much as you surrender to them, They just want more and more power from you. It shows from the Obama administration they had no respect for Obama. In the Middle East, they play by different rules. They play by an alpha-like game. There needs to be a manliness to their game. You need to show and you need to flex your power on them for them to understand the message. It's not like America where you have to be diplomatic and you have to be nice to each other. It is a lot, much more old school and primal in a sense. So their answer really should be in the administration, yeah, you can pull out, that's fine, do that interventionalist style. And then once you do that, you continue to sanction the hell out of them. And that's it. You shouldn't be lifting the sanctions. You shouldn't be trading with them, giving them a bunch of money, paying them off in a nuclear deal. You should just be done with them. You should treat them like they're not even there and hit them with hardcore sanctions. Don't trade with them. Don't do anything with them. That's the way that the United States should handle it, because any other way has not worked. We've done almost every other way. We've done sanctions with the Trump administration. For what we've seen, we've done pretty well with sanctions, and Trump trying to pull out. That is the only way in 20 years that we've seen that has been effective. I don't care what anyone says. You could say whatever you want about Donald Trump administration. When it came to international policy, foreign policy, he did a very solid job. We were very respected for 4 years. We did not see any major attacks from these foreign nations on our troops. And if there were any type of attacks, we answered back swiftly and extraordinarily with way more power than them to show them who was really the top power in the world. So to end here, I have the astounding cost of the Afghanistan war. This is by the Foundation of Economic Freedom, Brad Palumbo's piece. And he kind of highlights, and I've talked about this in some of my very early current events, the Brown University Cost of War Project study. They released this analysis that showed that the Afghanistan war had cost the U.S. at least $2.261 trillion, roughly $16,000 for federal taxpayer, this war over a 20-year span. The breakdown of the spending is shown in the graphic below, so that'll all be in the piece. But this report notes that these costs are, if anything, an underestimate, because the figures don't include the money we are obligated to pay in future healthcare costs for Afghanistan veterans, nor future interest payments on the money we borrowed to finance the conflict. So it's really more than that. But still, at the end of the day, $2.261 trillion is huge. And this is, and remember, this is only in Afghanistan. I've laid this out before. This is only in Afghanistan. This isn't in Pakistan. This isn't no operations in any other country around there, and there was many more operations. This was just Afghanistan itself. So the analysis estimates that 241,000 people have lost their lives in Afghanistan in the Afghanistan war, including 2,442 military service members, nearly 4,000 U.S. contractors, and more than 71,000 civilians. And once again, these figures are likely underestimates because they don't include indirect deaths due to hunger, disease, water shortages, and more that stem from damage done during the war. So we're not only talking about our people, we're talking about 71,000 of their civilians as well, and then we're having people that are dying from hunger, disease, water shortages that are due to the war, the effects of the war over in Afghanistan. So if you have to understand, if you're those people that live there and you say, we've had 71,000 of our civilians die, and we look at their number of people that have died, and it's nowhere near that, but it's still, I mean, we've had some severe casualties. Obviously, one life is always... we would much rather have nobody die over there. And you asked a question which is very interesting, and this is a good analysis. You saw 2,442 U.S. military service members, but nearly 4,000 U.S. contractors. What do you mean when you say U.S. contractors? It is people that are contracted out by the United States military or the United States government. They could be CIA operatives. They could be some of those guys in the Benghazi attack. Those guys were U.S. operator contractors technically. These could be some elite forces. These could be just random people that work for the U.S. government, and they were contracted out to go there. And I think that's actually kind of plays a role. So you understand, we had so many people in Afghanistan, and we really don't know what were they doing over there. We had 4,000 U.S. contractors died. Or what were they doing? Were they CIA operatives? Were they ex-CIA? Were they working some sort of security detail there? Or were they people that were trying to rebuild that died? I mean, it's crazy to think that we had 4,000 people that aren't U.S. military service members There are U.S. contractors that died in Afghanistan over these last 20 years. It's just crazy to even think about it. So my position always stays the same on this one, especially this one, because we've been there for so long and there's just nothing that's been done. We've been there since I've been in second grade, I think. So I've been like 8 years old since we've been there. We've been there for so long, I don't think there's any reason to be there anymore. I think we need to pull out. I think we need to stop capitulating, though, to those Middle Eastern countries. We need to treat them with the same respect they treat us, but we shouldn't be in there. And if there's any other issues from there that we have, we can easily bomb them or strike them from another country that's nearby. We don't need to have forces sitting and occupying the zone, because if we've killed 71,000 of their civilians, or 71,000 of their civilians have died because of us fighting, then obviously they're not going to like us being there at the end of the day. So, a couple quick headlines in this show. Arizona court released a security plan for recount in Arizona. This one's very weird. Epic Times piece. You had the court put public what the security plan was going to be. The cybersecurity plan was going to be for this Arizona recount, which means now if some sort of hacker were to break in, they can manipulate the results of this recount. And I don't know why they would release this. I think from what I understand, the Republicans and even the Democrats, from what I read from the article, told the court not to release the security plan and keep it private. But they still did. So, New York, New Jersey to open back May 19th. That is what I was talking about before. Now you realize how arbitrary it is that we just have a set date where they're just like, okay, I guess COVID's gone on May 19th. We can just go out and live our lives. And really, at the end of the day, you're not going to live your lives the same way. You're still going to be wearing a mask walking around in New York and New Jersey like we've been doing for this last year or so. So SNL to provide a safe space upon Elon Musk hosting their show. So Elon Musk recently, I think he just hosted their show over the weekend. Apparently SNL told their comedians, I don't even want to call them comedians, their actors that they have over there, listen, if you don't feel comfortable being out there with Elon Musk, then you don't have to be. And I think maybe it's because of, is Elon Musk like super right-wing? I don't really think he is. I think he's pro-freedom at the end of the day, which is why he moved his... And there's also that elitist, smug, arrogant attitude from people that live in California and in LA in particular, because that's where the elitist, A-list actors come from. So maybe they hate him because he moved all of his jobs out of California and he moved one of their biggest bases over to Texas instead. I don't really know, because he's not like a huge Trump fan or anything. He's not really that political, but he's not political in terms of party, but he is political in terms of freedom, which, everyone should kind of be fine with. He doesn't really care for a specific party, but I guess a couple of these cast members are really, really soft snowflakes. So California releases, and this is great, California releases 63,000 felons to make safer prisons. So California released 63,000 felons because they wanted the prisons to be safer. So now you guys can all deal with it over in California. So, and lastly, this was actually very important. Liberal news outlets retract the Rudy Giuliani story. So, specifically, the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC all had to retract false claims about Giuliani. So you say, what were the false claims? False claims were saying that he had a decisive defensive briefing with the FBI about Russian disinformation. And they were telling him, hey, don't get involved in this. We're warning you right now. If you get involved in this, you can have some serious repercussions. That's what the story that was espoused and the narrative collectively by the New York Times, Washington Post, and NBC, and that just was not factually correct. Rudy Giuliani disabused them of that narrative when he went on Fox News and said, I never was ever told anything by the FBI about any type of Russian influence operation. So that will conclude this one. And obviously, all of this is always just a hit job. This is now the FBI is being used as a political wing or a political enforcement arm of the Democrat Party. It's very obvious. But that will conclude. I greatly appreciate you all for tuning in. Please like, share, subscribe, drop the mic, let people know about the podcast. It's really going to be it for this one. It wasn't really that heavy of news, so hopefully this weekend special coming up will be better. Thank you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it, and I will see you all next time.